Okay, I'm recording. I love that t-shirt.
As am I. What t-shirt? Oh, this Die Hard one. It's fucking ace, isn't it? 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Resurrected A Winner Is You podcast. This is episode 57, and what a rare episode we have for you today. For those who are new here, think of us as your new and somewhat friendly neighbourhood book club. Here to conquer your games and act as your chaperone as you swim, swing and slide your way through the jungles of life and peel back a game's skin like a banana and reveal the juicy fruit inside. I was writing that thinking, that sounds like I'm talking about a penis, but I don't care. I'm just going to continue.
It's on brand for us anyway, mate.
And this week, lads and lassies, we are heading back to 1994 and then 1995 with a lesser spotted double feature for you today. That's right, we're coming to you with not one but two video game treats. Rare's classic Donkey Kong Country and what I suspect is the slightly less classic 1995 follow-up, Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest. And as ever, with that said, my name is David and sitting 76 miles across from me is the Diddy to my Kong, the Thelma to my Louise and the Holmes to my Watson. That's right, it's Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you today, buddy?
Hello, how are you?
Good. Do you know what the 76 is in reference to? As a little quiz to start the day, evening.
I can't think of anything that would relate it to Donkey Kong.
It doesn't relate to Donkey Kong in any way whatsoever. I didn't expect you to get it right because it is extremely nebulous given what we were talking about. It is the amount of games that Antonio Conte was in charge of Spurs for.
Oh, a memory I've already deleted. Although I can't delete it because they've just left his assistant there, who was basically Conte's right-hand man.
What a double feature. Did you go straight from Mourinho to Conte?
No, they had Nuno Espirito Santo for a cup of coffee.
I forgot about him.
Before they realised he's not a proper football manager and kicked him out.
I forgot about that guy in the middle, poor lad.
For God's sake. But yeah, as you said, I'm seeing double here. 4 Donkey Kongs. Yeah.
Back to
we were going to do the whole trilogy, but we can't do any more. The third one broke us.
Yeah.
Well, the second one broke us.
Yeah.
And then the third one just came along as if, somebody come along to you after you've just been broken-hearted.
We're going to get into it.
Come on, mate, let's go out on the leash. Go and find you a new girlfriend. You're like, I don't want a new girl. I just want to wallow in self-pity for a bit. Can you fuck off?
We're obviously going to get into this, but I don't hate Donkey Kong. As we'll discover, I do like Donkey Kong Country 2. It was probably the latter part of the game that broke me.
It really is, because
it goes.
Because I went back through, I've been watching a couple of playthroughs to kind of we're going to go through the levels very briefly.
Uh-huh.
And I actually, most of them I was looking at oh yeah, that one was good. That one was alright actually. And then I thought, I can't remember why I hated this game. And then I saw the last world and remembered exactly why we hate the fucking game. Brambles and bloody honeycombs and fucking rising acid lakes. It's a nightmare, that last world.
I'm trying not to shoot my load and go too deep too quick, but yeah, it's just there's the second one is, again, it's still a good game, but I was talking to you before and I knew I liked Donkey Kong Country, but I didn't realise I liked Donkey Kong Country quite as much as I did until we saw
it might even be top 10 for me now, ever, because it's an incredible game. I love it so much. And
I think that maybe it's sort of what is it, after the Lord Mayor's show? Is that the right?
Yeah.
It's like this follow-up album to a, I don't know, what is the first Oasis album? What's the story? Morning Glory or something like that?
I think it was definitely Maybe.
Yeah,
that's not a great example.
Not a great example.
Maybe the second album was the best one.
I'm going to plow on. I was trying to remember the Darkness's first album because that was.
That's a perfect example. Yeah. Is that because the Darkness is whatever the Darkness did afterwards, no one's talking
Permission
about.
to Land and then One Way Ticket to Hell and Back or something like that was
there you go.
And yeah, it was all right. It just wasn't quite on that level. Yeah, and so it's mostly good. It just does the odd thing, in my opinion, because I do wonder if you slightly disagree with me. I'm not fully sure, but it does the odd thing that I don't quite like so much. So like what I liked was how tight and like how tight the levels were in the first game, and how it would ask you to do something, like it would have a theme. It would be like a like jumping platforming. It would have like the traffic lights, or it would have the barrels, and it would sort of pick a theme and make you do that thing very, very well, and then move on to the next level. Whereas I felt the levels sort of dragged quite a bit in the second game. They were, in my opinion, far too long, and they would change gimmicks sort of part of the way through a lot of the time.
Yeah,
it just wasn't quite for me, and it didn't have that cohesive tightness of the first one, tightness of the first game.
Or a cohesion throughout, really. Its entire presentation. It was clearly them trying to push the boat out and have wackier ideas and knit them all together, and it doesn't make it. It's like, a bit more jarring.
The enemies didn't fit with the sort of setting that they had gone for. Like,
what you mean when there's crocodiles running through a beehive as you're a rhino?
Yes,
that kind of shit.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas I feel like there's cohesion is going to be tightness and cohesion is going to be my word for the day. Like, it's just that it just doesn't quite have that of the first game.
Well, we're gonna get into this later when we talk about the development. But everything that you've passed as reasons for why you don't enjoy it as much are as a result of intentional changes that they made that we both agree were not for the better.
Yeah.
Because and also apparently in relation to feedback. So one thing I will jump quickly to now is that apparently they had some complaints from like veteran gamers, which I assume makes sense considering even the first Donkey Kong was very late in the 16-bit era's life cycle. We're talking November 94. By the time, I think the PlayStation may have already been out in Japan by then, or at least very close to being out. So you're talking there are going to be veterans of the 16-bit era at this point. They apparently complained that the first game was too easy, so they specifically made the second game harder, which you and I absolutely felt, and is one of the reasons why we don't like it as much, because not only is it harder, the levels are considerably longer, slower, involve more exploration, which does not fit a 2D platformer. It's why I think Mario World 2, the first time I played it, I was bowled over, and then in every subsequent playthrough, I've just been kind of like, it's just a bit slow and over involved. It's not Mario World; it's just a bit of a trudge.
That's the Mario game that I remember loving as a kid for some reason. That was the one I really liked. Probably like
it's certainly Nintendo's attempt to be somebody else who makes good-looking games on the SNES outside of Rare, because that game's gorgeous. That will always be the case.
I'm absolutely fascinated to hear that you say that they intentionally made the game more difficult. Because if someone had said to me, like, I will make sense of this because initially I'm going to sound like I'm talking utter garbage. But like, if someone had said to me, did they make the game harder? I would have said no. I didn't think they did. They just made it longer. And as a result, it was more unforgiving. So like where you would normally have a checkpoint in the first game, this game you were only like halfway to a checkpoint and you were asked to do
fair.
It for much of the same thing for much longer.
That's fair.
Some of the things like I saw you encounter it quite often is some of like it's not hit detection, but like when we're doing that snake level near the end, it was like I saw you land on the platform and you just fell through it.
Yeah.
And then there's like that spider that just slowed the fucking game down to like this snail's pace.
Yeah.
It's just like
it's apropos that you're spitting webs everywhere because it feels like you're stuck in one for those levels because you
level
literally are.
That is basically all web slinging. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It was.
That's and that I guess as you say, it's not harder. It's just a more prolonged period of intense concentration where one mistake sets you back,
and one mistake
through another arduously long level again.
And one mistake towards the end of that game is game over. Like whether you've got two Kongs or not, like that again. That snake level, because that's ingrained into my fucking psyche now. But like that one, like if you make one mistake, even if you don't instantly die and you sort of half rescue it, it's game over.
Yeah. And then you have to let your second life just drain while you're sat at the bottom of an acid lake. Yeah.
And I do want to sort of, before we move on, sort of bring this on to like the discussion of hard games. Like you probably more than me, like in terms of like the Souls games, those are tough games, but they're fair. Mm-hmm. And I think there was instances where this game crossed into the unfair territory. And almost like random.
I think so.
Almost like the randomness, like that weird echied up Sonic. Who would, like, throw you in random directions. I couldn't quite figure out how he was doing it. So like sometimes you would survive from him grabbing you, and sometimes he'd just lob you to your death.
I think maybe you could in some way control what he was doing. There must be a technique that we don't know about.
Just didn't pick up on.
Maybe if you spam the left and right buttons or something, you can. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But he's basically unkillable until he's spinning around on the floor. Same with those knobhead boys. Excuse me. Same with those knobhead boys with the two giant like machetes that they just swing over their heads, where they seem to change the length of their swing almost dynamically if you jump at them or not. And then you'll land on their sword and die. There's just, a lot of really finicky platforming towards the end with like the birds and that inexplicable level where you've got to race another bird at the end through brambles where one hit and you're done. Leaves a sour taste that the first game never even gets close to.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Looking back over the levels of the first game, it's just an absolute blast.
Yeah, remember.
And I was very surprised to see that it's only got one extra level in the sequel. But probably just because the levels feel longer. Like I was like kind of skipping through a full playthrough videos, and the second game is an hour longer than the first, even though it only has one level more.
Yeah, that makes sense given the length of the levels, I guess.
And the fact that they stuffed it with bloody collectibles and bonuses, and
it's just
they Banjo-Tooied it. They didn't learn for Banjo-Tooie. They did exactly the same thing then.
You're right, and it's like sometimes I'm listening. I wonder if I said this in the last pod. I don't think I was on it at that time. I've definitely said it to you. I'm currently listening to the Sid Meier's autobiography, and he's talking about game design a lot of the time. Like it's a really he focuses very much on the game design of his life rather than like the Cliff Blazinski one who goes through like his. Is more of an emotional tale. This one's much more mechanical. Okay. And he talks about like the designing of video games, and he's like, it's about knowing when is too much, and having what you think is two good games is sometimes better than having one great game. And what he means by that is if you've got an idea for like 8 fantastic features, sometimes that's 2 games, and you don't have to shoehorn it into one experience. I feel like that's what Diddy's Conquest does, in that it has all these ideas that just smashes them into this one thing, where actually the focus of the first Donkey Kong, what made it so good was the platform and the sort of difficulty and the changing environments and the changing what it asks you to do. Like I still remember that was such a hard level, but so fun. That one in the first game with the platform that was running out of fuel. Because like, even like playing it and then watching you play it as well, it's just on the edge of my seat. And that was so simple. Like it's it's like 2 concepts. It's
a variation on a level template that they've already used. There's already a level before that, a couple of maybe the world before where you're on one of those moving tracks that's like an auto-scrolling level, and they just kind of added one extra bit to it to make it even more difficult, which is splendid game design. Rather than, what about if this part of the level you turn into a spider? No, I don't want to. Definitely don't want to turn into that snake ever again. He's worse than Winky the Frog.
He was bad.
Winky the Frog is very bad.
He was a loose unit. You never knew. I couldn't quite get his jumping down, old Winky.
Exactly. And the snake's kind of the same, really, isn't he? But they just added a charge move that you can never be guaranteed of its success or not.
So for that build up.
Yeah. Just I never knew what I would always release that bastard too early. But anyway, we'll get on to that.
We will.
It is a double feature, as we've already explained. So we're going to start with the first game, and I will briefly talk about its development, because I think that's one of the most interesting things about this, because of how groundbreaking it was from a visual perspective for a 16-bit console. Nothing look like this at that time. It was like something else.
It was beautiful. I think I said this to you multiple times, but I remember watching or playing this game when I was a kid, thinking I don't think video games could ever look better than this. Like, I think it's probably, that sounds so silly and quaint by 2023 standards, but I think it's important to like see just how good that game looked. And also bear in mind, you weren't playing this game on a crisp LED screen. You were playing it on like a cathode ray tube that kind of hid a lot of what actually looks quite weak about the game today. So
yeah,
it probably looks better in a CRT. I'd be willing to bet.
It may well do. Yeah, I mean, it's compressed to within an inch of its life, which I'll explain in more detail in a minute. But yeah, well, here we go then. So Rare are the developer of both games, obviously, the old Stamper brothers and whatnot. They were a really prolific developer for the NES. Apparently, they developed more than 60 NES games. Notable ones like Battletoads and Marble Madness. So they made a ton of money off of developing for the NES.
Forgot about that game. Did they not
Battletoads, to be fair to them, actually is another game that they
booted it.
There's
a Game Pass Battletoads, is there? Is that
it's
right?
it's yeah, and it's okay actually. I don't even know if Rare are behind it. I guess they must be.
I don't remember if I played it or not.
I imagine you probably didn't because somebody hated it. It might have been Sterling. I can't remember. But yeah, I actually think it's not too bad. But yeah, Battletoads actually is another example, really, of Rare pushing a console as far as it can possibly be pushed at the end of its lifespan.
I loved that as a kid, that game. My cousin and I...
It's beautiful for the NES.
We had a great time with it.
I'd imagine that game is harder than all the Donkey Kong games, which are hard, but Battletoads is notoriously hard.
Yeah.
Apparently, so when Nintendo released the SNES in '91, Rare decided they were going to kind of limit their output for it. So what they did instead was invest their profit from all their NES games in this Silicon Graphics Challenge workstation, which has something called alias rendering software, which rendered 3D models. Each model apparently cost about 80 grand and made Rare the most technologically advanced developer in the UK. Yeah. They were originally apparently planning to use that technology for the N64, which was already in development by the time they started working on Donkey Kong Country. However, Nintendo were desperate because of the Mega Drive success and how good Aladdin on the Mega Drive looked that came out in '93. They basically went to Rare and said, this game looks amazing. We want you to use this technology you've already shown us demos of to make a better looking game than Aladdin on the Mega Drive.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, there's different conflicting stories from Rare, apparently. The most agreed upon one is just that Nintendo came along and said, we want you to revive Donkey Kong, but apparently some people in Rare have previously said they showed us a catalogue of all their IPs and said, pick which one you want to reboot, and we chose Donkey Kong. But I think it is more likely that Nintendo asked them to do that.
Okay.
So...
What was the last Donkey Kong game before Donkey Kong Country? Was it one of those
Donkey Kong 3?
Donkey Kong 3.
Yeah, so it's
give it a quick Google.
Yeah, I think you play as Donkey Kong Jr. again. I don't think Mario's in it. Because I know the second one was Donkey Kong Jr. That's one when you... Or was it? Yeah, you look it up and then tell me. I don't even know if it was on the NES. It probably was.
It looks like a NES game, and actually, I've now seen Jeff Gerstmann playing this game. Yeah, it's a sort of left to right. You just Donkey Kong, you swing about. It's not really much like what Donkey Kong Country became. Is
it like the original Donkey Kong then?
No.
Or the sequel to it? Okay.
No, it's a lot of like sort of moving Donkey Kong across the screen, hanging from vines and trying not to get hit by stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is weird. It's almost like an. Oh, that's where Mario's trying to get Donkey Kong back, isn't it? And you've got to get out of his way, I think. Or some kid with a weird gun is trying to shoot him.
Yeah. It's an arcade.
It was still released in arcades first, though.
I was about to say it's got a bit of an arcade vibe about it.
Yeah. So that was, I believe, was the last game before Donkey Kong Country.
Quite a change.
They did release that Donkey Kong 94 on the Game Boy a few months before Donkey Kong Country. So they're obviously, I think they were just trying to push the brand a little bit before this big thing came out. I mean, obviously everybody was going crazy in previews for this game. They even released like a VHS from Rare talking about like, I think it was called Play It Loud or something. It's like a hype VHS they made for Donkey Kong Country. It was ridiculous. And apparently there's a fun fact that one of the people who's briefly in this video as like a software tester or something ended up being the president of Retro Studios, who of course have now made Donkey Kong games in the last 5-10 years. Donkey Kong Country was one of the first home console games to feature pre-rendered graphics, which they achieved through a compression technique that converts 3D models into SNES sprites with little loss of detail. And Rare apparently claimed that Donkey Kong Country had the most man hours put into it of any game ever made at the time. It had like 22 years worth of man hours across the team by the time it was done.
Oh my god.
They said they were working
How many years did it take to make? So how many members of staff is that?
12 members of staff, and apparently they were working like 12 to 16 hour days or something stupid like that. They were desperate to get it out before Thanksgiving in America. However, it was actually the first Nintendo product ever to be launched in the UK before any other region, because obviously Rare are from the UK. Yeah.
It's probably quite a vague memory of reading that. You've read it as well, the Console Wars book, and how Nintendo did not like giving their IP out to non-Japanese companies. It's probably quite a big thing then to give a British company the keys to Donkey Kong. I guess at the time he wasn't a major franchise, so it was probably a free hit, but nonetheless, that's probably still quite a big thing for Nintendo back in the day.
Yeah, you're right though. They were very hands off with it, and Miyamoto apparently would get involved every now and again and sort of send them designs and help them figure out names for characters and stuff like that. But I think primarily the reason they were probably so hands off with it is they didn't necessarily understand the technology that Rare was using, and they probably didn't know what was going on, so they couldn't really have as much of a hand in it because they couldn't really do a lot for it.
Yeah, perhaps.
Because it was one of the first games for a mainstream home video game console to use pre-rendered 3D graphics. Apparently it was used in like 93 for some Finnish game on the Amiga. They developed this compression technique that allowed the team to incorporate more detail and animation for each sprite for a given memory footprint, which better preserved the pre-rendered graphics, and they called it advanced computer modeling. So basically what they did is they create these like wireframe models for every single aspect of the game as well, like even the UI, all the like scenery, the level structure, all of it's wireframe models. Then they put shaders and textures over the top of that. Then they add an animation skeleton to it for like better realistic movement. And apparently these models took like hours for them to render. So they'd like they were using this high-end rendering equipment that they use in like the car industry. So they would have to leave their computers running overnight to like render just a model of like Donkey Kong in a certain position or whatever.
Imagine coming in the morning and there was a mistake in there.
Apparently, I saw somewhere they were saying that like some guys would get like really pissed off because they need to render theirs, so they'd like turn everyone's computers off so they could run their own, or they'd like shut it down so they could render theirs
or something.
Maybe it chewed up like the power that they could do, because they had to have like really like loads of fans on it and all this kind of shit. And apparently some artists would like turn other people's computers off so they could render theirs instead. So then they developed this software to then compress these models down. Apparently, one of the guys from Rare said in an interview, I can't remember who it was with now, but he said we had to make some software to convert it from 16 million colors into 16. So that's why it's very, very pixelated if you actually look closely, like we did on our massive fucking 50, 60 inch TVs. Yeah. You can see the cracks. or the pixels in the display.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing. Like, I try to give it a break for that because, like, I was looking at it thinking, "Oh God, this looks like vomit today," but it was never meant to be viewed how we were viewing it.
No, and as you said, and I completely lived as well. Like at the time this game came out, absolutely desperate for it. Like.
Yeah. I think that's really
I was so jealous of my mate who had Donkey Kong Country.
For people that are maybe too young or just never played the game back in the day, like I really do think like that is a really important point I want to hammer home in this podcast. Is like how good that game looked in 1994. It was stunning. Yeah. It was absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and not only was that the work of like, you know, really talented artists, it was the work of really high end rendering kit, really high-end graphics machines, like bespoke developed compression software. Like they put and record numbers of man hours. Like they proper went for it with this huge risk.
That you described this as like a 3D sort of sprite that they compressed to a 2D sprite.
Yeah,
I love the idea that nowadays Tropical Freeze and the likes probably are just 3D sprites. So it's just, of
course, the
unflattened version. He's as time has gone on, he's unflattened himself back to how he was always meant to be.
I mean, I would assume that, you know, you pick up the box of Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong Country 2. I have the Game Boy one. Hang on.
Did you ever look up if there are
like this kind of stuff here? I would imagine is the 3D models that they are compressing down.
Yeah, probably. Do you think, or did you ever look up, because I think I said it to you once and then forgot to look myself, are there any sort of online texture packs or mods you can download to make this game? Because now you're playing this.
Yeah, I did look at it.
I would love to see this with the like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze treatment. I just would love to see what it looked like.
Oh. Oh no, someone's just kind of made a video of how the game would look if you were playing it today. They've done like some sort of HD.
So due a remake. So did Nintendo? Did the Donkey Kong IP leave Nintendo when it went?
No, it left Rare.
It left Rare.
Which is why they took everything else, like Conker and Banjo and everything. But because that was Rare Creations, but because obviously
we'll never get
Donkey Kong was always their IP. The only thing that so they have technically remade the games because the Game Boy Advance versions are completely remade. They add the source code.
Good.
Well, I have them, yeah. I've got 1 and 2. They are, I probably saw them as really good without realizing what I now know, that the games are not ported. They are remade on the Game Boy Advance because they didn't know how to get the source code off of the floppies onto these carts for the GBA. So they went through the original games frame by frame and remade them.
Wow.
From scratch for the GBA. They've even added some new stuff in number 2, I think, on the GBA, like a new level and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it was entirely Rare that did those GBA versions, but they apparently would get like people to go QA test it, and they would be doing this for fucking ages, coming back being like, "Oh, you're supposed to be able to roll off this bit and then do a jump, but you can't. It doesn't work." So then they'd fix it, and then somebody else would be like, "Oh, you can roll off and jump to this bit, but you're not supposed to be able to do that." And it was just like a nightmare to try and get it. Take a SNES game, basically, then copy it from scratch onto a completely different piece of kit. Really impressive stuff. But yeah, so they were remade. They did all 3 of them. Apparently, they felt they were getting like really into their groove for the 3rd one. So much so that whoever this, I can't remember the name of the developer of it, they sort of said to Nintendo, like, we'd be really up for doing a version on DS. Why don't we go and make Donkey Kong Country 4? This was at the point, obviously, where Rare had been sold to Nintendo, but were not seen as a, developing games for the handhelds of Nintendo was not seen as an issue by Microsoft because they had nothing to compete with in that area of gaming, so they weren't bothered. So they were going to let them do it, but for some reason, and I don't remember what the reason was, they didn't go ahead and do Donkey Kong Country 4. Instead, they remade that god-awful, sacrilegious piece of blasphemy that is Diddy Kong Racing on the DS instead. Which is gutting to think we could have had a proper Donkey Kong Country on the DS that was of a really good quality rather than a terrible remake of DKR.
I've got a feeling that DS
should be burned.
Of Mario 64 was also not great.
It's only because of the controls. I think everything else, like visually, far better, runs better, but it's just the controls are just terrible because you've got to use the touchscreen. So it's awful. Lovely. And there was no analog stick on the DS either. So you're playing a game on the DS with a D-pad, which was the very reason for an analog stick's invention in the first place.
Was it 3DS before they did that nub?
Yeah,
because they were just. I'm sure that exists just because Nintendo didn't want to admit they should have put an extra analog stick in that controller. So they're just like, nah, we'll give you a nub. Because then we're not.
And then a second nub.
With that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolute nublets.
I nearly spat my beer out there. Lead designer. There's like a lead designer called Greg Mayles, right? And he reckons that they designed the levels on post-it notes, and he said it's like a giant jigsaw puzzle. All the levels were designed on post-it notes and stuck together. I've still got them all.
I love that.
We'd come up with ideas for a level, say swinging ropes, and come up with as many variations of that as we could, draw them all out on post-it notes and stick them together in the order we wanted them to be used, and then basically drew bits of scenery to connect them together. That's how every single level was designed.
That's really cool. That should be in a museum somewhere, post-it noted up in order.
It should.
I'd love to see that.
I think the Rare guys apparently have a bit of a history on Twitter for like anniversaries and stuff. They'll just chuck out like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of stuff from the development of whatever.
That's cool.
So apparently loads of this stuff has been tweeted out there by ex-Rare members to sort of show these crazy ideas. And I did see some pictures when I was looking at this of like walls and walls of post-it notes just kind of put together. I guess that's explains like how the levels, as you said, kind of feel almost different for each one. They've all got a different idea or a different, not gimmick, but close to that about them.
Yeah.
Kind of like, what's the game we were playing recently where we said that was like that? Titanfall 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kind of like that.
Oh, I see. Here's the post-it notes. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Because obviously, like, I think when they brought Mario Maker out, Nintendo were really big in talking about, oh yeah, we designed all our levels on graph paper, didn't they? And they put it in, they gave that little book out.
About his wee graph paper drawing his Mario levels. And then they basically did that again with Mario Maker, didn't they? That's how Mario Maker roughly works.
I guess that's probably how they got the idea to make it into a thing and to say, let's just put a big graph and you can stick stuff in there like we did, just on your Wii U.
And you've got a cat paw that moves about the screen instead of
slaps people
instead of Miyamoto's hand.
Yeah, but maybe it was his cat.
Maybe, hopefully.
So apparently, it was released on November the 18th in the UK. And by 4 p.m. the following day, it had made £1 million.
Wow, that's a lot for 1994.
Yeah, it was Rare's best-selling game ever. Still is. It was the third best-selling game on the SNES as well.
I think, off the top of my head, I think that is more than Unreal Tournament did, which is probably shows you how big that was.
Unreal Tournament? What, was that the same year?
No, but it would have been the 90s Unreal Tournament, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only just doing that. I'm basically because
of Cliff Blazinski.
I've got the memory of a goldfish, and I've just finished his book. So when did Unreal Tournament? Because I think that did something like half that.
What, in a day?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
1999. So
yeah,
that was a massive game in its day, and came after Donkey Kong.
Yeah,
as well.
Donkey Kong Country is a game that, as I said, was existing in the time where the PlayStation was being released in the world. Not all over the world, but at somewhere in the world. It was the third best selling game of all time on the SNES after Mario All-Stars and Mario World. And it's sold about 9.3 million in total.
Feels like a cheat because it's so many games rolled into one. A bit like, but not quite. The biggest cheat of all with Nintendo sales is that Wii Play, the one that they gave away with controllers.
Yeah,
the one that wanted a second controller to play Wii Bowling. Had to get this bloody game, which was all right. It had some tank.
It was okay. The tank one was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And that has got such inflated sales for no deserving reason
Reggie
whatsoever.
Fils-Aime's fault, that one. He's the one that wanted it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because Nintendo Miyamoto specifically thought the game deserved to be released on its own, and Reggie was like, "Nah, you'll sell more if you stick it in with controllers, mate." And they did.
He was right.
Yeah.
Big time right. Apparently the sequel, Donkey Kong Country 2, is the best-selling SNES game that was never packed in with the console, because I guess Donkey Kong Country probably was at some point.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it, with game sales, is they tend to not be representative necessarily of the game, do they? So
not in that era.
Well, even this era. So, like, the one that jumps to mind, which I guess isn't quite this era anymore, is Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed 3 sold very, very well. It was the one after Assassin's Creed 3 that took the punishment for how bad Assassin's Creed 3 was. And you tend to see games get punished subsequently. So, like, if they had decided not to kill the series and then reboot it, the one after Resi 6 would have been the one that would have got pile-drived rather than Resi 6.
Yeah, that's true. People kind of react after the fact. They'll be like, well, that game sucked. I'm not buying the next one.
Understandably so. I mean, I do the same thing. Like, big Mass Effect head here. And then Mass Effect Andromeda came out. I played it and got severely, I was going to say third degree burns. It wasn't. It was like, I don't know what third degree is, but it was through to the bone. And I was like so hurt on that series that it would have been the game after that I would have considered not buying, whereas Mass Effect Andromeda was always getting bought for me.
Is that not the remaster of the first game at this point then? Which I've still not played and probably never will.
Either. Yeah. Ah, poor Mass Effect.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some animal buddies?
Yeah, let's do it.
Who's your favourite? Do you want me to list them first? We've got in the first game you've got On Guard the Swordfish,
I think
Espresso the Ostrich.
On Guard the Swordfish is the most useful. My favourite is probably the Rhino.
Right, yeah, Rambi the Rhino. You've got Squawks the Parrot, who does
that guy
more in the second game. But in the first game, he's only in one level to make you be able to see in the dark. He has a little light behind you for one of the levels.
I forgot about that in the first game. No, I take it back. He was good in the first game. I liked that mechanic because that was a level that put the shitters up me. But actually, it was really fun.
Yeah. And then we've already discussed him, Winky the Frog, who's a winky wanker.
Yeah, he wouldn't even be. Trying to think, like, my least favorite of the second game is the snake.
Yeah.
And the ant thing. It's a spider.
Spider?
Yeah, it's a spider.
They're the only two they added.
Yeah, he's worse. He's better than those two. So
I don't know. I don't mind the spider. I didn't mind the spider in the first level he's in. The level where you play just as the spider is a car crash. A slow car crash.
I just felt like he slowed the game down too much. But I
don't mind the ostrich, but I can never use him properly. I always lose him quite quickly. It's all about the swordfish for me. He is, as you say, by far the most useful.
Yeah.
The fact that you can attack those dickheads under the water and swim without having to press any buttons, just directions. On Guard he's a top tier guy.
But I think, like, in terms of like feedback to the player, it's really satisfying when you nut someone with Rambi. Like the noise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course he can run through and get you the bonus levels by just walking into walls.
Yeah.
He can bounce off bees, which I don't think any of the other ones can do. So maybe the frog can do that.
Yeah. A wasp versus a rhino. The wasp is not coming off.
Don't care how big the wasp is.
No. That baffled me at the end when we were watching the credits of the first game, and they're called bees. Like, they look like hornets.
Oh yeah, yeah. And one of the levels is even
like
called
hornets.
Hornet something or other, or maybe that's in the
yeah.
second one. It's called Hornet Hole.
That's it. But they're not hornets; they're bees.
Yeah, hornets don't make honey. I assume
Another example of that game making no sense.
Yeah, the biggest example, I reckon, that whole beehive bit.
Mm-hmm.
Worlds, levels. The first world is Congo Jungle. I've got here, what I've done is like written down the...
along with my phone.
Just go on to... Well, I haven't got all the levels, so I found them all listed on Giant Bomb, which you often forget, actually. You talk about, Giant Bomb...
Wikipedia, yeah.
Yeah, the podcast or the YouTube, but Giant Bomb's website is an incredible piece is an incredible achievement.
Good old Jeff to thank for that one.
Yeah, it's just an encyclopedia. It's great. So for the first world, Congo Jungle, I've just for all the worlds for both these games, I've kind of marked the ones that are the most memorable levels, and I would say the first one that's memorable, other than the first level, obviously, which you and I replayed about 10 times each when we were running out of lives. The most memorable level has to be for the first world. Has to be the first time you do the water level.
Yeah.
That music, just the real contrast in how it looks when it goes from brown tree stumps and green leaves into this beautiful blue with coral all around you. David, as we've talked about many times, has a long sort of parked idea to make a YouTube video or an article of some kind about games that have water levels that aren't shit. Donkey Kong Country apparently made that list.
Donkey Kong Country, yeah, it's the thing I hate about swimming, as Alex has heard endlessly, is very often they make the game not fun to control. And it goes from being this game that is like slippery, buttery smooth into this sort of slow, clunky thing. And the key to having good swimming in a video game is to make it doesn't have to be the same, but to make it as fun. As a basic principle should be fun to move around. And this game is.
Is that not literally what Mario 1 is? Isn't the underwater physics in Mario 1 just the game really slow?
Oh, I don't know. Could be. That is.
I think that's what it is.
I think
Just,
you're right. Yes. Yeah, I think you're spot on.
You're just really slowly jumping, and that's basically all it is. Yeah. Whereas this, you can still use the sprint button underwater somehow, and it does make you go faster, and you can drop slower and raise yourself quicker.
The two Mario games that stick out in my head. One for being how heinous it is the swimming in Mario 64.
Oh.
And
bless his heart, you're absolutely. I mean, one of the best pieces of gaming music of all time is that Docs song.
Yeah,
but that level is fucking cancer. I hate it.
And the one that I remember not being too bad in Mario is the swimming is it the Game Boy one where he's not actually swimming, he's in like a little submarine, or he's got like a helmet on.
Mario Land. Yeah, that one's all right. Yeah.
But the best swimming in a 2D platformer is the Rayman, the remake of Rayman. Or not the remake, but the sort of the reboot, like when it came out in the Xbox 360. That is perfect. But not too
music
far
and that's amazing as well.
Yeah, not too far behind is Donkey Kong, because it is fun and it is good. And it just sort of changed. Like I was saying, my favourite thing about the first Donkey Kong is that it sort of sets you a challenge at the beginning of a level, asks you to do it really well, and then gets out of there. And that's what this game does. Is it sort of switches things up, keeps it interesting. And again, beyond what I say about swimming, it should be basically fun to control. Another key aspect of a swimming game is it's an opportunity to switch up the gameplay for a level and then go back to what you were doing before if you're doing a platformer. And that is what this game does. It's a sort of palate cleanser before you then move on to going back to doing similar things that you were doing before. Exactly.
And of course, the swordfish makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't restrict the movement the way that we were just talking about. The only other memorable one I've got from the first world is Barrel Canyon. Let's talk about the barrel levels in the first game, because there's more of them in this game than there is in the second game, and they are brilliant in my opinion.
I was dreading them when we were playing.
Really?
And then I got there and I was like, oh no, these are really fun. Yeah, I've just got this memory of playing it on Switch in my girlfriend's old flat, and me getting to those levels that are just all barrels, and me finding it a slog. But then I went back this time and it was really fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't know if it was mindset or where I was, or like because we were playing it on an emulator, I had quick saves that I could just get myself.
We didn't really use them a lot for these first ones, did we?
Not
we were
really.
Pretty well behaved. The second game we let ourselves down, but the first game we played it pretty much legit all the way through, no cheats.
They were great. Again, it's another example of this thing: do this well, or you're going to get punished. And once you do it well, and you've got to really concentrate, it's fun. It's really fun, really, really fun.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a clear reference to the barrels from Donkey Kong.
Yeah,
it's the whole reason they're in it.
Another bash on Donkey Kong Country 2 that I'm trying not to just completely wail on all the time, but like it contrasts with me. What I liked about the first one is like, again, the movements of the barrels were largely and this is what I think we were talking about, fair versus unfair. The movements of the barrels were, there was like a few set ones. There was the ones that sort of ticked like a clock, then there was the ones that spun, and then there was ones that moved up or down or left to right, and that was it. Whereas like there's barrel levels in Donkey Kong Country 2, and the cadence of the barrels changes. Like it'll go from ticking to like spinning to like just, there's like an almost in between one.
There's even those ones with the timer that you have to control yourself. Yes.
And I just thought that felt slightly unfair, because you didn't know until you got into the barrel necessarily what you were going to get from it. Whereas the first one does, and it again makes you be good.
Yeah.
And if you can be good at it, it won't just fuck you. It'll let you continue. Whereas there's a bit of fuckery in the second one, as well as asking you to be good.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the first game, and both games.
Yeah. I haven't listed them in these rundowns. Firstly, for the first game, that it doesn't really feel like they're worth talking about, but there are boss fights at the end of every world. That is a clear improvement in the second game over the first, because the first one, I believe, has two beavers, 2 ostriches,
and they all follow the same
a bee,
format.
And a bin.
Boy, the bin. Yeah, you're right.
Just
that's a
shite.
That's a glaring weak point in Donkey Kong Country, is the bosses, especially because they're different bosses, but they all are the same thing.
Maybe. One room, jump on a tire, maybe.
Yeah.
Avoid shit, throw shit,
jump on its head,
or jump on his head. Yeah.
And that's
King K. Rool totally changed that up, and is a decent challenging boss.
Yeah,
I think
I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's hard. I was.
Yeah.
I'd
say he's better than probably every Mario boss that had been done up to that point. Maybe Bowser on Mario World is a close to it, but I think K. Rool is better than all the NES ones. Where you just basically, most of them, you're just jumping over his head.
Yeah, the NES ones. That's the only ones I could think of, and then I could think of Birdo. Quite like Birdo, and
Mario 2 is different gravy. Yeah, but we'll get to that later in the year when we play Mario All Stars, which I'm very much looking forward to playing.
Wait for that.
Just as an aside to that, and a something that we've discussed in our old podcast before, so listeners probably know what we're on about. But we again played these games, taking it in turns, level or die at a time, over Discord, and had a blast for the most part. Yeah. The second game upset us a little bit, but the first game we just couldn't stop. Like every time I stopped playing it, you and I just kept I could tell that you and I both had the itch to get back straight away.
Yeah.
When are we going to play Donkey Kong again? And I would not play it if you weren't there. I wanted to play it as if we were sat next to each other.
Yeah, it was so good. So good.
The second world is called Monkey Mines. The first notable level from that is Minecart Carnage. Let's talk about the minecarts. This is the first one where the minecart itself jumps rather than you jump out of it, which comes up later.
Yeah. Tough, but another good one.
Yeah.
I again, like to go back. I keep going over the same old ground, but the cadence of this game is I love. Like it comes at you with the minecart levels perfectly. Like the timing of these levels come along. It's just perfect. At the same, you're ready for something different. You know, like maybe a swimming one will come back, but no, they hit you with this completely different game that it asks you to. I don't know. What would you call it? It's sort of on rails, literally, and you just got to usually you've got to. It's
like timing.
It becomes a timing thing. Which I guess the barrels are timing.
Yeah, they are too. Yeah, memorization, timing. Yeah. But I love the minecart stuff.
Yeah, and I like how throughout the level, and again, I'm here. I'm describing basic game design, but they do it so well. Is that they ratchet up like I
Yeah.
was going to say tension, but the franticness of the level is really really well. To start that you're sort of going along nice and slowly, then they'll chuck in the odd little curveball that'll catch you off guard, and by the end
Yep.
you are just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, it's a literal, almost a literal roller coaster, isn't
Yeah.
it? Where they pace it exactly like that, where you're going to have moments to breathe, where you're going up a slope, but then you're straight back down a big drop into the next bit, jumping over gaps and avoiding strewn mine carts and trying to grab the Kong letters. And yeah,
Perhaps
excellent.
I'm trying not to derail your notes, but perhaps one of the, I was going to say improvements, but like they take it in a welcome new direction in the second one. I was a big fan of those cart levels on the skull.
They completely ditched the actual mine carts for Donkey Kong Country 2 outright, and they take a long time to come back. And when they come back in the form of the little skull head, almost more like an actual roller coaster in that sense, because it's in the sort of funfair level, isn't it?
Yeah, you are. I love the backdrop to that level as well.
Yeah,
90s almost reminded me of our Streets of Rage days.
Yeah, or like Casino Night Zone or something in Sonic.
Yeah. Good one.
Stop and Go Station is a terrifying level. The one where you have to turn off those rock guys that just absolutely like one hit kill, can't be hurt. You got to leg it to the stop button to make them sit still and run past.
They really make a lot of gravy out of these sort of like, so they build on that as the game goes on, don't they? So like that, that's sort of they have the traffic lights, which is the stop and go one. Then they start making you turn the lights off and on.
Yeah,
it's the same concept, isn't it? But they just sort of tweak it a little bit. But yeah, this is another cool level. It is scary because like they've timed it so well that you've got to move towards the end of that level. To get to the end of the platforms, you need to go.
You're going to be a bollock hair away from getting caught by the end of it.
And I love the invincibility animation is not quite the right word, but the animation, so you can see the crocodile, like so when you turn him off, he goes into a little ball. And then he stands up again, and very often you're getting towards your next stop station, and they're starting to stand up, and you're like, "Oh, gotta go!" And it's just so well done, really, really.
And they move at such a rapid pace as well. But it's as you say, it's a theme across the whole game where your platforming is also manipulating the level around you. So you've got two elements of it. You're crossing gaps or jumping on enemies, but you're also changing what's happening in the level on the fly, which is like a theme throughout the game and is a really like clever way to kind of add a new level into the platforming genre that probably hadn't been seen that much by this point. The only other memorable one I wrote for Monkey Minds is Millstone Mayhem, which is one of those weird temple levels that they have in this game, all like out of absolutely nowhere. I suppose temples are in jungles, I guess.
Aztec jungle, yeah.
Yeah. They're the ones with those big giant wheels that kind of have the little weird beaver in the middle. Just like, the gopher, what world was that? That was the second one. The third world is Vine Valley. Vulture Culture is another barrel level, but it's the one where you kind of have to do a lot of like chaining hits of vultures as you bounce on them to get to the next barrel, or sometimes like where you wait for the vulture to get right next to the barrel and fire yourself directly into his face to get like a launch off of him. Well, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And Forest Frenzy is the one that actually has the vines in it, where a lot of that level is just kind of like on a rope that's just moving slowly across, and you're going up and down to avoid bees and stuff like that. Yeah, they're cool levels. And Gorilla Glacier is, I think, the most memorable for you, because you mentioned it a lot in the early game when we were playing together. Like, especially if we did a barrel level that was tough, you were saying, "Oh fucking hell, wait till we get to the bloody snow versions of these."
I think that was the one when I played it before, it just kicked my ass. Because right before that, like I don't know, the world after that is that like the pollution?
Yes, Creme Croc Industries.
I remember that kicking my ass, and I came into like Creme Croc Industries like bloody and bruised.
Yeah.
But yeah, playing it together, it wasn't too bad. It was probably just a mentality thing. I had someone there to hold my hand as I struggled, but yeah, I seemed to get through it by then. I was just so engaged, I think, by that point in the game.
Yeah, Yeah, you were rightly in your groove. I mean, there was I can't remember who it was. Apparently, one of the heads of Rare, might be one of the Stamper brothers, was apparently really keen on them having weather effects in the game, as if they weren't pushing the graphical part of the game enough. He wanted them to have weather effects. So this one gets like darker and more stormy as you go into it, which is, I mean, I love that level. Snow Barrel Blast is really, really tough, but just a really cool visual spectacle of a level. And then they sort of immediately after that, they switch it up into this slip slide ride, which is in those really bright blue and purple sort of ice caves where
they do,
you're slipping around on ice, and you've got those ropes that you either slip up or down the rope automatically, and you've got to kind of time jumps to get across them. That's pretty tough, but I like that level. I like that level visually. There's another water level on this one, which is also memorable, called Croctopus Chase. The ones where you've got all those octopus things that like spin in circles, and you get chased a lot through that level as you're swimming around.
Oh yeah, I remember that level.
Yeah, and then Torchlight Trouble is the one you were alluding to earlier, where you have to... No, sorry. That is the one where you have to... No, that's the one with the parrot.
The parrot.
And he's hanging around giving you a light.
The only issue with that level is turning. If you turn around really quickly, it's a bit painful to watch. Like with the parrot turns as quickly as the character does, so you get this little light for those that didn't get there. And as you turn the character, like the parrot is like switching around, so you're seeing like flashes of lights in different directions. It's quite messy, I thought.
It's worse in the one in the water in Donkey Kong Country 2 with the fish, the little fish with the light hanging off him.
Yeah. Because
that one you're twitching even more. But yeah, they must have play tested that and been like, because those games are, they are kind of twitchy at times. You're going to be, especially if you're jumping and flicking around in the air to kind of manipulate where you're going to land. It, as you say, it can be really visually distracting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the world after that, as David said, is Cram Croc Industries. The first one, that is that Trick Track Trek, which is where you're on the, I guess, sort of Mario World style platform in an auto scroller, which has these lights on it. I don't think this is the one where you have to do the fuel. That's in Chimp Caverns, called Tanked Up Trouble. It's the one in the last world. But these levels are cool as well. I like the auto scrollers in this first game.
I do.
They're not annoying as they would be in some Mario games.
If levels done right, they're really fun.
Yeah.
They create a sort of sense of urgency
that you have no sort of control over. You have to be as urgent as the game is making you.
Yeah.
You can't do anything at your own pace. Minecart Madness is the one where you jump out of the minecart. So you're doing a lot of jumping over to avoid enemies, or you're jumping into another cart as your one's falling off down into a black hole. I don't think that's the one where you have to hit the barrels to open things. That's in the second game, isn't it?
God, yeah.
And then the last one I've got from memorable from Crim Croc Industries is the Blackout Basement, which is the one where the lights just kind of switch off and on sporadically. You don't have any agency over them like you do in Loopy Lights, which is in Chimp Caverns. That's one where you're hitting the barrel to turn them on again. But Blackout Basement is one where it just goes completely black every now and again, and you've got to kind of either wait for it to come on or make an absolute leap of faith to land on the platform or not.
And they love to fire a bunch of crocs at you, like those little mini lads when they turn it.
The bouncy bastards.
Yeah.
Oh no, the little snappy.
Yeah, the little snappy lads.
Yeah,
there is a bit in that level that you were just talking about where they honestly must fire about 12 of those crocs at you, like those.
Right at the end, yeah, I remember that. The final world is Chimp Caverns, and the only one we haven't mentioned so far is Platform Perils, which is a one that you did far before me, and you were having to tell me like techniques on how to do it because I must have not been paying proper attention to when you were playing. You know, the ones with they've got like a little platform that's got like a little arrow on it, and it either goes left, and towards the end you're going like left, right, jumping off, going up, and then left, and you've got to throw those barrels at those big lads.
Yeah, new enemy type at you that even Donkey Kong can't jump on, so you've got to resort to battling them. And
I like barrelising.
and you've got to really time it. Like I was saying to you when we were playing, you've almost got to throw the barrel before you think you've got to throw it.
Yeah.
Because like they've got the wind up, especially Donkey Kong seems to have a bigger wind up than old did there.
Yeah, which the last thing is the K Rool battle, which we've already talked about. So I think we both would say that, you know, our choice for this game, if we had to make one for a character, is Diddy Kong 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. Although
he throws better, he's quicker, he rolls off the platforms easier.
I wonder if it would have changed any if we had realised Donkey Kong can do that ground slam that we didn't realise until near the end.
I wonder if that actually does anything at all. I've never even tried to hurt an enemy with it.
No, we should have.
Might have to try and twat a beaver in the face or whatever they are. Go for. See if it works. Because obviously they took that move and put it in Smash Bros. And it's a great move in Smash Bros. If you want to be a troll.
My favorite.
Just sit there slamming the ground.
I don't know why, but one of my standout memories of this game is there was a couple moments where you. I think it was the same thing over and over again. You were trying to throw a barrel to open up a hole in the wall. And
oh, fucking hell, yeah.
Kong kept like reaching back with the barrel and twatting some enemy in the back of the head and then the barrel gone.
I don't think I ever managed to get in that bonus room. You did it on the first try, but I never managed to. Every time, as you say, some guy would walk into the barrel that was behind his back. Oh, God, that was infuriating.
Yeah, you're right, though. One of my favourite games. Like, it's like no joke. Like, I absolutely
unbelievable.
adored this. It was so good. Like, and I said it to you while we're playing, or in a text, like in a way that I just wasn't ready for. Like, I thought it was going to be a good game. I knew I was going to have a good time because it's Donkey Kong, but like it grew.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, like a lot of the time with video games, especially we've spoken about on probably this podcast, but certainly other podcasts about. I've gone blurred. There I go. About video games that are special to us, and a lot of them, like The Witcher, for example, it's a time and place. Like it comes along at the right time. Maybe this one just came along at a time I was in the mood for a game like that. But I mean, it's quite possible. But that doesn't detract from just how well made a game that is. I don't think I really encountered any bugs that I can think of. It was tight, responsive.
Yeah.
It never outstayed its welcome with any of its so-called gimmicks. The game looks incredible. And it's just fun to play and move around, and it brutally difficult in a way that I've really found quite rewarding. I wasn't often frustrated.
It's a very enjoyable challenge.
Because when
very
you fail,
satisfying.
it's your fault.
Yeah.
And if you, again, like right frame of mind to be playing it, you want to go back and do better.
Yeah.
You never feel like you got done over by the game, which is it's such a fine line to hit, and they nailed it.
They did. And they nailed it whilst making this like groundbreaking visual spectacle that did not affect how well the game runs at all. On a fucking SNES, let's not forget.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Like, there's no slowdown, there's nothing. It's just perfection.
Like, thinking about modern video games, they tend to do one thing, like, maybe that's not fair, but like...
People say that about this game, though. There's some revisionists who go, oh, it just looked good, it's shit. Like, the game's actually... I've seen that said before online. Yeah. Because
like, in my head, I was thinking back to like video games that... The Xbox 360 era is probably the best because it's quite an old era now. But like... video games in those era, the Killzone series that were or even like Call of Duty, not so much, but like the Battlefield ones maybe, but they were like shooting for the Crisis games, shooting for like top end visuals.
Yeah,
and then
Crisis is a great example.
When time passes, you look back and you're like, well, what do these games have to offer now that the graphical fidelity isn't quite there? And a lot of the time,
where's the substance?
They don't have much. Whereas this game was shooting in all directions. It was a graphical masterpiece, and they've made a stonking good game out of it.
And they've revived a dormant franchise and created a character that would be nowhere near as well thought of now without these. I know Donkey Kong, the original arcade game is a classic that will be talked about forever. But Donkey Kong, the character, would probably... Who knows what would have happened if Rare hadn't have done this? Would he be in Mario Kart? Would he be in Smash Bros?
Did you uncover any information during your research? Was there any thought to... I guess what's interesting is, like, to me, like, the sort of king of platformer is Nintendo. in the 90s for Mario was a really, really strong decade. And this has sort of come along on the same console, in the same headspace, largely under the same company as the big dog, and it's still sort of managed to carve its own niche. I wonder how they managed that so well, or if that's just sort of me creating a narrative in a revisionist manner.
Well, it certainly came along at the right time to be unopposed by a Mario game, because they'd all been out by this point. Mario World was a launch title for the SNES. So this was also Nintendo at a stage where they were gearing up for N64 development.
Yeah.
So they were pooling resources for that. So they just needed someone to step in, make them like a hit killer app for the SNES, to kind of keep it on top, keep it above the Mega Drive, sort of fight off the pressure from PlayStation, which was just being released. Like they needed something huge that year, and this was enormous. I mean, Super Metroid came out in '94 and sold like shit, because this game is what every kid wanted for Christmas, not Metroid. They screwed that over rather than anything like Mario related.
Yeah, what a game! Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, incredible. Donkey Kong Country 2, however, is also a very good game, but not one that we are as hot on.
No, I'm gonna try my best to be fair about it, because I think there's a bad taste in my mouth with the end of the game, and I think I was just saying to you the whole time, this isn't as good as the first one, but it's still a game in its own right that is good.
Yeah. Now, one of the first things I remember seeing, when you look at the Wikipedia page for Donkey Kong Country 2, is how one of the first lines of it says, Diddy's Conquest received acclaim, being widely regarded as one of the greatest 2D platformers ever made. Which I think you and I would say is the first game, not the second game.
Yeah. One of the best 2D platformers ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like, when was this article? When was this? Was this written when the game came out? Like, are we including later?
Well, this is a
platform?
Wikipedia, so,
that's nonsense.
Maybe they're talking about at the time. Who knows?
Yeah, perhaps at the time it might have made a list, but like subsequently and even before that, so many better platformers.
As I said to you, I think before we even started getting into playing the games, this game came out effectively a year to the day after the first one. It came out 21st of November 1995 in Japan, and the third game came out the following November. So they basically made one of these every year for between 94 and 96, which is, I think, some good going, but probably is not going to be indicative of some fair and resourceful workplace culture.
No, and I wonder if also that is perhaps why the game's sort of artistic cohesion is not quite there.
Maybe
there's a lot of reused assets in this game, and they've obviously, to try and justify making a new game, they've tried to change where you are. So they've changed the environments, perhaps forgetting that the enemies and sort of the assets that they reuse were created for a game that had different environments, which is why like you're talking about the B level where you've got rhinos going about and stuff. It just makes no sense, but it's because of resource. It's because this game came out within a year of the last one, because all they did basically was make new levels, did they, and add a heap of coins. Added
a couple of animals, and added a heap of collectibles.
From what we played in the third game, it looks like they build on that even further, because there appears to be a shop in the third game that sells
there's a bear selling something. They talk about the game having a pirate theme, and obviously the box has a pirate theme, but really the pirate theme lasts for about 5 levels, and then that's it.
Funny how long it took me to realise that the second game picks up with the last one. The first game leaves.
Same. Yeah, I think the level's probably even the same, or at least the area's the same, isn't it? You're still on the galley. Somehow Donkey Kong's been kidnapped while defeating King K. Rool, and now Diddy Kong's left, and suddenly his girlfriend arrives to chip in.
Yeah.
Don't know where she comes from, but she's there, and I can tell you where she comes from in terms of her actual existence. She comes from a place of Nintendo being a little bit, what's the word? Kind of nervous about Donkey Kong's actual girlfriend, Candy Kong. So apparently the creation of Dixie came at the expense of Candy Kong. She was originally going to be the one who was in this game, but they removed her because Nintendo had concerns over her sexually provocative nature. Because all the kids want to fuck a gorilla.
Yeah.
So
she's the save station in the first game, right?
She is indeed, but she was nailed back because she's got boobs.
I wonder how she would have handled, because she is very different looking. She's from the other. Like,
get on that,
legs.
boys. Oh, get on that filth.
In her swimsuit. Although, looks like Dixie's nicked her. Does Dixie have a bow? Or have I made that up? I think
she does.
She does.
She's got like pigtails, hasn't she?
That's
why she can hover like a little helicopter. Yeah, she was allowed in the animated cartoon, which is all kinds of fucking weird.
There's a rap in that. Is that correct? Where have I picked that up from? Or is that
maybe that's
there's a Donkey Kong?
The rap's in the Donkey Kong 64.
Is it right? Okay.
There is. Every
a
episode of the Donkey Kong cartoon had a weird singing bit in it. I know Donkey's definitely done a video on it, and I thoroughly recommend rewatching that after this pod and anyone listening, because it's that animated show, which I remember watching as a kid, is like nightmare fuel. It's horrible.
Was the Zelda one not weird as well?
Well, the Zelda one, Link was just a douchebag, like a teenage prick.
Princess is the thing.
Exactly.
I can remember, or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if that was good. Probably not. None of them were good, really. The Mario ones were all right.
I remember they existed, but I don't remember much about them.
The only thing I remember is that a wrestler, Lou Albano, yeah, he played Mario in one of them, where like they would cut from like clips of him in an apartment in Brooklyn with his brother Luigi, and then they'd go into like the cartoon. Then they did like a Mario World cartoon that had Yoshi in it, like Super Mario World. It's a blast from the past. And that I remember liking. I think they're all on Netflix, by the way.
Oh, are they?
I think so.
I tried to watch
the Donkey Kong one's totally
recently. I got halfway through and thought, I'm not even enjoying this from a novelty perspective. Bailed.
You're not even enjoying it just from the fact that you knew that Bob Hoskins is drunk in the scene you're watching him in. Yeah. Oh, what a shame.
That again,
we might have to power through that with a beer one night together or something.
Maybe you do, yeah, because that's
strong drink.
Like weird sexualization of the characters. Like when they go, well, maybe it's
like
not.
Peach?
Maybe it's just 90s. Well, even like King Koopa is like they're all like, and all his little policemen are walking about like they're in the YMCA. It's really.
Oh, really?
And like it's really bizarre.
What? Yeah.
I think they were maybe trying to make them look punky, but they look oddly sexualized in 2023.
Yeah. There's nothing about that film that I understand how Nintendo allowed it. Not one element do I understand that Nintendo okayed.
How did this get?
How?
How did you get here?
They must have just been so naive, or just like fed up with it and just couldn't be bothered anymore. But the potential to tarnish the Mario brand with that shit. Obviously, they obviously outweighed it. We're like, well, we'll just keep making good games and people won't hate us for this. I don't get it.
The Koopas, man, are maybe the weirdest part of that whole thing.
They are some kind of whoever made those models, like who drew out a design and got human beings to develop like prosthetics for that, is a psychopath. Like they've got inner turmoil they need to fix.
It comes from a machine where King Koopa can de-evolve people.
That's right, yeah.
Because he's
Yoshi's an actual dinosaur in it, isn't he?
And he's inverted himself, so he's like evolved himself.
Oh, into a human?
Yeah.
And then he's de-evolved some Goombas.
Yeah, I think he gets some, if I'm remembering right, he de-evolves a little bit and he starts getting like lizard tongue and stuff like that.
Yeah, he does.
It's weird. So weird.
Yeah. Right, let's talk about Donkey Kong Country 2. So as we already said, it's more challenging on purpose. Got a pirate theme apparently because Greg Mayles, the guy from before, was fascinated with the golden age of piracy, so he just wanted to do that. Now, one of the things it said here on whatever I researched said the team attempted to maintain the sense of speed and requirement of timing from the previous game. Dubious. To avoid reproducing the same game entirely, Mayles altered the gameplay to be less linear and more encouraging of exploration while respecting the basics of fluidity and speed. Do you agree that he did such a thing?
The one that jumps out to me when you said that was the latter parrot level where you're flying around and there were multiple options for directions, but those multiple options were not actually options. They were pretty much dead ends, but there might have been a coin at the end of it. I'm trying to think of other... Well,
I think a lot of the bonus barrels are probably what they're talking about in terms of exploration, because there's so many. But I remember when I was watching the playthrough, I was trying to find what the levels were, but I just kept like skipping forward and seeing more fucking bonus barrels. Like, where's the actual levels in this video?
I guess there's
so
also
annoying.
There's also there's the odd sort of cart level where you can go two different ways, because we were speaking about it.
Oh yeah. That cool bit where you go backwards is rad, man.
So I see what he's saying, but I don't know if I fully agree.
There are obviously some levels that do feel snappy, quick, but they do seem to dwindle as you get further into the game, where it's like at the behest of like 10 minutes of going through a level that's trying to crush you without being able to make a single mistake.
It's the less linear thing that I think I'm sticking on. I just don't think that. I think
I see, yeah.
You're
still left to right, right?
Yeah,
or bottom to top.
And like, there's again, like the latter levels where you're that snake and you turn into the bird. There's like multiple choices for directions, but they all funnel into the same place. It's still linear, but maybe by SNES standards, it's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm being maybe I'm just I'm struggling to put myself back in that headspace. But yeah, I mean, I guess he's gone for it in that regard. I guess the debate is whether that was a good decision or not. I'd love to speak to someone that thinks it's a better game and just hear what they think about it.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to look into some reviews and see if people actually said why. Maybe we could see, and there's probably some little clips in here for the on the Wikipedia for the reception. So a lot of people think it was graphically more impressive than the original game, which I think I agree with.
It's more diverse as well.
It's more diverse, yeah. There's no question there. But people, it says like people saying it was more fun than the original, which I just do not agree with. But then, are we looking at it from a much more, wise, long in the tooth gaming mind, where we can we've played so much since, whereas then was adding gimmicky stuff, making it more wacky and bright and colourful, was that the key to a more fun experience? Oh, now you get to play as a spider. Now you're floating in the wind instead.
You're probably correct there, and I think there's certainly an aspect of that. I think also video game criticism has grown up a lot in the intervening years. It was quite like if you go back and read magazines from the 90s, for example, a lot of them are quite badly written, full of mistakes. And the quality of the journalism is pretty poor. So a lot of the time, I think the industry's come a long way, perhaps. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, we're also living in certainly from your and my perspective and your perspective, in a post-map vomit world. So like we've come through like the age of where like video games are just like smashing content at you for the sake of smashing content at you, and maybe we're just a little bit jaded on that, and we're looking for something that's a bit more focused and knows what it's doing and feels a bit more confident. Whereas this,
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, is like adding stuff, and I'm not sure it does it for anything other than just to do it.
just to pad stuff out, and make it feel bigger and
artificial padding. Yeah, that's what I was trying to shoot for.
And we've also obviously, been and gone through the whole 3D collectathon games, including fucking Donkey Kong 64. Yeah. So, this is early elements of that, but we're very tired of that at this point. Rayman Legends and Origins were great because they didn't pull any of that shit. It was all, bish bash bosh, get you straight through it into the end and just blow your pants off while you're at it, which is what the first game is like. Whereas this one, there are so many levels that aren't like that. Like I said earlier, it feels a lot more like the Yoshi's Island to the Mario world, for a comparison. What do you think about the decision of Rare to, coming off such an enormous success that was Donkey Kong Country, to take Donkey Kong out of the game and have Diddy Kong as the main character and introduce another character completely and not have Donkey Kong playable at all?
I think I said it to you while we were playing. I found that quite jarring, that they've basically reinvented a franchise and then yanked the main character out of it. They've done a Metal Gear Solid 2 on us, haven't they?
Yeah.
They just yanked him wholesale, and I don't think
so. That guy again, Greg Mayles, the designer, has said they dared to do without him because they were young, and which allowed them to disregard risks. He was only 23 apparently for this game, which is mental to think about.
I don't know. It's one of these things where you can have your opinion on whether you like him or like him being in there or not. I don't necessarily I'm not overly married to the character, and I don't want to be one of these people that...
We didn't use him anyway.
No, and I don't want to be one of these people that just have a go at people for taking risks, because in hindsight, that is a massive risk, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, his name's in the bloody box.
Yeah, they didn't take that out.
No.
But I guess maybe that they were boosted by the fact that they made so much money off the first game. They thought, right, well, people are going to buy the second one, whatever. Mm-hmm. They were right.
Yeah.
Perhaps this whole you have to take Candy Kong out maybe meant that it was going to be Donkey Kong and Candy Kong. And once they said you got to get rid of her because she's a slut, they were like, fine. We need a girl character though, so we're going to make it Diddy's girlfriend, and she'll be a lovely, charming young lass with a pink hat and a bows in her hair and whatever.
Yeah,
they obviously wanted to make a different character with new abilities. They claimed that they controlled too similarly Donkey and Diddy in the first game, so they wanted somebody totally different. And I suppose, although we've already discussed the differences when talking about Donkey Kong Country, these two are very diametrically opposed. In one of them is fast, and the other one is a lot more considered slower. Mm-hmm. Has the hover ability.
Yeah. I would have been interested if the Donkey Kong Country 3 had Donkey Kong and his girlfriend in it, or they had sort of done the opposite, split the duo up. It would have been interesting. Yeah. Who are the main characters in 3? It's
Dixie Kong and Baby Kong.
Yeah, so they were not backwards about hacking out characters then.
No. Donkey Kong's long gone by the third one.
None of the sort of 6 characters in the 3 main games are in more than 2 games, I guess.
All 3 of them, yeah.
Yeah, so Donkey Kong's in 1, kinda. Well, he's playable in 1 that I'm aware of. Dixie's in 2 of them, Diddy Kong's in 2 of them, and that Baby Kong is in 1 of them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he plays almost exactly like Donkey Kong.
Yeah, except he's scared of mice.
Yeah. Good God. It was the second best-selling game of '95. In a correct world, Chrono Trigger would have been the best-selling game, but I don't know what was, but it was the second best-selling game of the year anyway. And
that's a game that is that not a series that is sold a bit like Metroid, sold amazingly poorly considering how well thought of it is?
I actually think Chrono Trigger did really well, thinking about it, because I was watching a video about it the other day, and I think that one actually did sell pretty well.
Is it Chrono
purely
Cross
because
that I think's generally meant to be pretty good, but people didn't buy it for some reason.
Yeah. I'm not sure why, but it was nothing. It's nothing like Chrono Trigger anyway for some reason.
No, it was like a third-person action game, almost.
It's still like a turn-based RPG. I think it's just got no bearing on the story. There's no time travel in it. Characters aren't the same. Not really sure. I haven't played it to know. Yeah, and it was the sixth best selling game on the SNES, and it's as I said earlier on, it's the highest selling SNES game that wasn't packaged with the system, which is that's some good going. That's riding a wave, effectively. Mm-hmm. Lastly, we talk about the worlds and the levels again, and maybe this will bring us back round when we can take ourselves away from the terrible end of the game back to a simpler time. Gangplank Galleon is the first world. In terms of memorable levels, I got the first one. I think is that main brace mayhem, which is the one where you're sort of climbing the rigging of the pirate ship, and you got those weird dudes going sliding down on you.
Yeah, it starts pretty well, the game.
An early example of like the verticality this game tries to add, and is not shy about continually trying to re-add because it's prevalent throughout.
That's a fantastic point. Yeah, one that I didn't realize until you said it just there. It really does do that. The other thing that I noticed about this game is it ramps up quickly. Like I thought, like the early worlds for
the first level is pathetic. Like it's almost like just walking left to right. There's some enemies there, but they're merely a suggestion of peril rather than anything else. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Then like by the time you get into the second world, it's immediately stops fucking about.
It does, yeah.
I've got Lockjaw's Locker written as a memorable level from Gangplank Galleon. It's a swimming level. The only reason I've put that down is because I love the swimming music in this game. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, you were a big fan of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then some of these levels aren't going to be memorable for the right reasons. The last one I've got for Gangplank Galleon is Topsail Trouble, which is where you've got the first instance of the snake, where you're just basically bouncing up sails with the snake, not as the snake, but on the snake. What's his name again? Rattly the snake.
I like is the boss for this world quite good, if I remember correctly?
The bosses in general for this game are quite good. I think the boss for this one is the
vulture, is it? And you've got to sort of climb up the mast, and sort of every time you hit him he moves up a level, and the climb and stand on gets slowly smaller.
Bettered, of course, by the ghost version.
Yes.
I'll get the bosses up actually because I didn't write them and I probably should have done. You want the giant bomb one, don't we? How did I do that? Must have done levels. Oh, fuck's sake. Yeah, it was the one you just said. Right. Second world is Crocodile Cauldron. The first level is is Hothead Hop, where you use first of all, this whole world is like a lava theme. You're bouncing off these crocodile heads, and then you get to use the spider towards the end.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's not too bad. Again, like I'm not a fan of the spider, but everything else about that level is pretty fun.
Yeah, I do like the the idea of being able to make your own platforms by by double tapping the A button.
Totally.
They've definitely given more thought to these new two enemies. They've given them a bigger move set. They've given them more abilities.
I like the idea of them. I just wish you felt a little bit more dynamic. Maybe even would have liked a swinging ability. Would have been quite fun to add to him. Yeah. I think that would have made the levels where you're sort of spitting out platforms a bit more enjoyable if you were sort of swinging back and forth and jumping. That would have made a better level for me.
Lava Lagoon is one of the best levels in the game. That's the one where you've got the water that's red, and you have to jump on the seals to make it swimmable.
Yeah, that is.
And they like spit out and they clap, and then you can actually jump back in it.
Yeah, there's also a bit where it must be within the same area where you jump on the seals and it's normal water, and they make the water ice.
Yes, that's in the one of the later worlds.
Yeah, that's really good. I like those water. Again, those water sections are really good fun.
Yeah, and I like the way that this game integrates like getting out of the water and running around and then jumping back in again to kind of make it more of like a
that also
varied thing.
Loops me back to what you were saying earlier on, and maybe to give the guy credit, Males, it's not Rick Males, the other guy, credit, that those levels did feel, whether they were or not, I don't know, they did feel like they weren't as linear, because there certainly seemed to be paths out of the water and in the water. Like, there's a couple of times I fell in the water thinking I'd failed at something, but I realised there was a whole bunch of paths that could be taken down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in fairness, that's true for that set of levels.
Yeah, they're not taking you on directions that will get you out of the level a different way. They're taking you to secrets, but yes, there's more to explore and find if you like bonus barrels where you collect stars and tokens and shit. I
keep trying to say to myself, remember this is the SNES era, but Super Mario World was doing different exits to worlds when it came out, so it's not beyond the wit of man. But that's not what they were shooting for, so
yeah.
Fine.
Red Hot Ride is the one where you're on that blue balloon and there's the steam that you've got to...
Oh, yeah, once I got into that, it's quite a fun take on those.
Yeah, now this is the level that I had a story about that I told you that I was going to tell. So my friend James, when I was a kid, he's the guy who was an only child, so spoilt rotten. He got all the cool shit. He got all the new video games whenever he wanted them. He got both the Donkey Kong games. And I remember... he and I were playing that level, and we were 10. We were shite, and we just could not do this level. It was like the hardest thing that had ever been created by man. And we got to a stage where we were like, right, we've had enough of this. Let's go out and play football. But his dad would not let him leave the room, and we were not allowed to go out and play football until he completed the level. And at the time... I thought his dad was the coolest man alive for making him play video games until he beat it. It's like, wow, I wish my dad would make me play video games. What a great punishment.
The opposite of what you would expect a parent to be doing.
Yeah, but he's like, no.
Outside in the sun.
Yeah, he's like, I've paid for this game. I've paid for this computer. You are finishing that. You're not going to give up on things in life. You've got to, he was an ex-policeman, so I guess he was, inbuilt to be a cunt. But fuck the police. So he just wouldn't let us go out and play football until me and James completed the level. We had to prove it to him that we'd done it, and then we could go out and play football.
You had to prove to him that you were real men.
Yeah. Well, did it, Dad? It's not even that hard anymore, is it?
He's still in that room today, isn't he? Trying to finish that level.
Yeah. Poor guy. Yeah, I think he's the most only child man I've ever met in my life. He was just like an entitled brat for his entire life. Bless his heart. The last memorable level I've got for this is Squawk's Shaft, which is another one of these like linear levels. You know, they have those ones with like the backgrounds is all like wooden. It was like it's like a mine shaft that you're kind of going up in. But this one has the parrot that carries you towards the end, and you got to shoot some nuts or eggs or whatever it is at some bees. His least offensive appearance in this game, I would suggest.
Yeah, I actually quite like the idea of Squawk. Like having it adds something different, doesn't it? It lets you fly. You can shoot with him.
Same with the spider as well. They kind of added these elements to those two characters.
It's just latterly the Squawk levels require precision that I think doesn't feel right.
It's not quite fair. It's it kind of reminds me of those fucking levels from the original Turtles game. You know, the ones underwater where you've got the coral that electrocutes you. That's that kind of bullshit. I mean, making you race through that is just like criminal.
Yeah.
What's the next world? Crim Key. And then that's the first barrel level we have in that Barrel Bayou, which is the one I was talking about earlier where they have like a timer on and you've got to turn them. I don't think either of us ever ran out of time on those barrels. I don't even know what happens. I assume it just shoots you automatically, but we never got there.
Yeah, it must do.
Glimmer's Galleon, we spoke about that one. That's the one where you're swimming and the fish is lighting things up for you as you swim. Rattle Battle is the level I was at when you started to play, and then you caught all the way up to me when I was on that level. That's the first level where you play as the snake, which made me quit the first time I played it. That's why I was up to that when you joined, because fucking hell.
Fuck this guy.
And then Bramble Blast, which, to watch, as you found out, really boring. Beautiful music, but it's just that one where you've got all the brambles in the background. It's just barrels for like 5 solid minutes. And to watch it, I remember you saying that it looked like it was going to be pish, but when you played it, you actually quite enjoyed it as it was quite relaxing.
Yeah, again,
remember, I got super lost in it. I don't think which helped.
It switches the pace up all right. Like I wouldn't say I loved the level, but it was just it was different from what we had played up to this point.
Yeah,
it's probably no. I was going to say it's probably the most. There's a later level where the music is. I can't remember which one it is. There's a later level. Where the music is really chill, but the game is.
It's the same music though.
Absolutely fisting you while it's trying to be chilled about it.
Yeah. It's whining and dining you before it penetrates your arsehole with a hand. Yeah. Crazy Kremland is the next world. The first one, as I suggested earlier, is Hornet Hole, the one with the bees. It's not memorable for anything good. I really hate that level. I think partly it's because it reminds me of the horrible beehive level in Cuphead, which I also absolutely hate. Target Terror is the first minecart level of the game. Wicked.
Really good.
The one where you've got to jump out and hit those barrels to open the gates in front of you.
Yeah, really
awesome.
Good. Really good.
Then another minecart level in Crazy Kremland is Rickety Race, which I made look like really hard going and a very slow experience, where I killed about 6 of the guys and got to the end, and you absolutely battered through them. I don't know what I was doing wrong. I'm sure I would have pressed right, but I obviously didn't. Because I was going so slow.
Yeah. I love that as well. That was a really good level. It's quite there's a few games that do that sort of overtaking mechanic. Like there's a few racing games and stuff. It wasn't new for its time, but like within the sort of confines of the game, that was really a really nice sort of switching up the pace.
I think the biggest triumph of this game is its crazy new ideas that they chucked into the minecart levels. It's probably the best thing that this game does in terms of like evolving. Yeah, like an evolution from the first.
We're talking about apes and chimps. Let's go evolve.
Yeah, good point. The next world is Gloomy Gulch, which for the first level, Ghostly Grove. I thought you and I really enjoyed that one with the little ghost ropes that come in out of existence with a lovely ghost noise. And then we have Haunted Hall, which is the one where you've got the mine carts and the time limit. And if you run out of time, the ghost gets you. You got to get through the door before the big ghost skeleton grabs you.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Do you remember we both did that when there was basically 0 seconds left on the final timer to get through that last gate?
Yeah, just by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, and then Web Woods is the one where you play as the spider for almost all of it, and it's so slow. It's dull.
Just doesn't fit with the rest of the game to me. Just so out of place. But then, do you think? I'm trying to think. Is there a level? No, there's not. Is there a level where you're each of those?
That's the last level of the game. Yeah,
okay.
You're the spider right at the end. You remember? I haven't even talked about the bosses beforehand. We've had that. I forgot to mention this. There's a sword in this one, which is totally random.
Oh yeah, it took me for. I think you actually had to tell me what to do because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Just run away for a bit and lob a cannonball at him. Cudgels Contest, I think, is the guy with the big club who jumps up and down and
that's right.
tries to land on you. That one was
with him until you figured out what to do. And then it was
I figured out he's always in the middle by the end. Yeah, because he kept hitting the barrel as soon as I picked it up because I couldn't figure out what to do. The boss of the Crazy Kremland was King Zing Sting, which I remember you watched me play and you were like, "Oh, that one looked pretty painless," and then it absolutely broke you.
Yeah, absolutely destroyed me that one.
Yeah. That's what you're playing as the parrot.
I was not good at using the parrot. I just never got good at it.
The boss in the Gloomy Gulch world is Creepy Crow, which we both, I think, is one of our favourite ones where you've got to fight the ghost parrots and, again, make your way to the top of the rigging. You're back in a pirate ship for some reason. You go all the way through the woods, all the way through the fucking fun fair. You're suddenly back on a ghost pirate ship, and then we move on again.
Yeah, also, like, for a game that males that liked as pirates?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much pirating going on after the first level.
No, there really isn't. The final world, real final world, I guess, is K. Rool's Keep.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the levels that are memorable in this are levels that drove you and I utterly insane.
Yeah, I think we're just done by this point.
Yeah. Exhibit A for the jury, Windy Well. Oh my fucking god!
That's another one that was just felt unfair because like it would just cut. It was obvious that the game code was told or was like programmed to like put the wind in and out its specific points, and there was bits where you were like going up stuff where you could sort of instigate the cutout before you were ready for it to cut out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So like it would want you to land on a platform, but it could cut out just before you were high enough to land on the platform. Or and then that momentum would take you into an enemy and kill you.
Yeah, it's like when you're stood on the platform, the wind is supposed to be off. So as soon as you got level with the platform, but not on it, you're moving towards the platform, but you're at the same height, it would go, oh, you're at the right height, and the code would cut in, as you say, to kill the wind, but you wouldn't be on the platform, and you just drop
there was a
and
bit
then
in that
land
level,
on an enemy.
Because it almost broke you and I, and we spent ages doing it, and I think I finished it, and then you finished it not long after, but it was like the time that you actually...
Felt like forever, though.
The time that you actually finished that level, there's a bit of a section there where we were like putting ourselves underneath bees and using the wind to go underneath bees, and I realised that if you just don't jump and you weren't bothered about collecting coins, you could just walk underneath them, and we just didn't do it for some reason. We put ourselves through the pain each time. And
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I saw you do that.
No,
Maybe that's one of the
I didn't do it either. I didn't figure it out until I was watching you play, and I was like, oh, we don't even need to jump here. We can just run to the left. And then I was like, I'm going to tell him next time he does it, and then you did it. So I was like, oh well, job done, move on.
Oh mate, yeah, my god, yeah, because I just couldn't get it right. I'd always be at the wrong part of the being up and down. So the wind's going like up, and then it drops to let you kind of, as the wind drops for a few seconds, you can then sort of duck under the bees, and it will push you back up in the between and that bee and the next bee. And to be able to avoid that, man, I'd probably feel very different about this game if I knew that. The next memorable, in inverted commas, level of K. Rool's Keep is Castle Crush, which feels like it just goes on and on and on and on as the walls try and crush you from beneath.
Aye.
What's the bit that really annoyed me in that? I think it was something I kept like rolling into, and it was killing me anyway. You know, and it drops enemies on you from above. The whole thing just goes on for so long. Like the halfway stage once, takes.
I'm sure for doing nothing wrong.
Oh really?
Yeah, you rambied a bee and it just killed you.
That's it. Yeah, I did. I got the horn on the bee, but it killed me, and then the bee died as well.
Yeah,
that happened to me a few times, didn't it? Enemies would die whilst I get hurt. It's like, well, which was it? Did I do the correct thing, or did it kill me?
Boomerang lads. There's a bit near the end of that level, or just before a checkpoint, where they just throw like multiple boomerang lads at you.
Yeah, and you've got such a narrow passage to try and jump over that almost your jumping arc is too big that you're going to land on it every way. Yeah, oh man, that sucked. Clapper's Cavern was good. I remember we played Clapper's Cavern, which is the one where you kind of, again, you're going in and out of water. This is the one where you're making them turn it into ice, and then you like slide on the ice, and you can like duck and jump and duck. Reminds me of Mario 2 levels, some of the ice levels in that.
You were like sliding under stuff and jumping and swinging. It was really good. That was good.
And then even with the swordfish as well, sometimes if you were going quick enough, you'd like jump out, and you could get him to like flap across platforms when he's not in the water to try and get some stuff. I remember you and I both were like, wow, what a breath of fresh air that level was. It was snappy, it was quick, it was tight, it was fun. The rest of this has just been a shit show since fucking Webb Woods or whatever it was. And then, of course, the ultimate dick punch of K. Rool's Keeper's Toxic Tower, the fucking snake level with the rising acid.
That was like
just
one
painful.
One error in this really long level, and that was it.
Yeah. And too much usage of that charge jump move we talked about earlier that just, I could not predict when it was going to work.
Yeah.
Then you have a final world. I mean, there's a bonus world, but forgive us, dear listener, we couldn't be fucked with it. because to get into that bonus world and do all the levels in it, you've got to get like 75 of those clover coins, and nah.
Thank you.
But the flying croc is not just the final fight with King K. Rool. It is also Screech's Sprint, which is a bramble level that takes long enough as it is that you then get to a halfway point and it ends up with a parrot race that we talked about earlier, where you are going as fast as you can through very tight insta-death corridors in a race that this was the point where you and I stopped taking it in turns to watch each other play, and we're just like, right,
let's just get through it.
Single screen time, we're getting through this. And I heard you go quiet, or you made a noise that didn't sound joyous. And I thought something had happened, and I was like, you haven't done it, have you? You're like, yep. There's no joy, no satisfaction,
Pure
just
relief.
Yeah. And I was distraught that you'd done it, and I just thought, oh god, I'm going to be here forever, and he's done it.
I come and go in these things, and I think if it's done right, it can be good. But I'm not, as a general rule, a fan of games that are difficult until you sort of memorize the route. And I feel like you had to just fail enough times in that level to the point that you just had memorized the route that you were going.
They're putting cheeky bananas in there, loads of places to
try and
trick you into just going into dead ends. Yeah, absolute nightmare. Just a horrible end.
Watch someone do that level and get all the coins, because there's some bits where there's loads of coins going about. I'd love to watch I might go looking for that after this podcast as well. Look for a video of a guy doing that level, a person doing that level, and just get all the coins as well as winning the race. Bet there's someone that's done it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the video I was watching is like 102% completion, so he must do.
Oh my God.
I'll send you that video later. What do you think to the this is the last bit that I've got notes wise. So what do you think to the last K. Rool fight? Better or worse than the original? I think it was worse because of the invisible stuff annoyed me when he goes invisible and he's like floating after you, and the shooting of that thing that reverses your controls. I was losing my shit at that. I was really done by that point.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
You did it quite quickly. This is another one where you were like, yep, I've done it.
I think I probably agree with you. It's maybe not quite as good as the first one, and you're right. There's like the invisible stuff is a bit of an FU. But I liked it. So there's like a phase of the boss where he starts firing things at his gun that sort of come at you looping.
Yeah, chain balls.
I enjoyed that because the loop changes every time you would shoot, so you'd have to sort of figure out. There's a lot of the time, certainly in the first game, once you sort of figure out a pattern, you can sort of recreate it over and over again. Certainly with those bosses, there was a boss in the first game I got stuck on, and you sort of figured out the pattern. It was like it was one of those beakies that shoots nuts out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Once you figured out the pattern, you absolutely kicked his ass. Whereas this didn't quite let you settle in that way, which I quite appreciated. I did like it. I just didn't like it as much as the first final boss. Because the first final boss as well, also, he might actually do that in this one. No, because you actually kill him, don't you? And then you've got to fight his ghost version. I think that's how it works. Because in the first one, I may be misremembering. The first one, you kill him, and then he comes back after the fake credits, where all the credits are like Kremlins, just doing like the lighting and the sound mixing and stuff. In the second one, you have to start. I assumed I'd killed him, and you were fighting a ghost version of him, because he starts doing that disappearing stuff, and then you start shooting like, instead of cannonballs, he'll shoot like specters and clouds and versions of that. Yeah. What about the one that inverted your controls? Did you get hit by that? Yeah, every time. Remember, I kept saying to you, I can't do it. I can't jump over it. And then there was the red guy that would like slow you down, make you go really slow. But actually, in some circumstances, when I was doing that, getting hit by that helped because you could stay in the air for longer. True. It was the bit where you like actually have to chuck the cannonball into his gun that did me all the time, because I kept saying to you, didn't I? Like, I've thrown it in his gun. Mm-hmm. Why am I getting hurt? He'd still managed to suck me into the gun and hurt me. So that was my frustration for that bit, and it left a real sour taste in our mouths. We did try to briefly start Donkey Kong Country 3, but we gave up very quickly. Yeah, I don't think either of us were really not in the mood. No, we were done, and there's other fish that we've got to fry coming up, so
Indeed, there is.
We had a nice
Yeah.
love affair with it, and it's time to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a better game than we probably left feeling
Yep.
that it was, but there's no question in my mind that it's nowhere near as fun and enjoyable as the first.
It's not even close to me, and I think if you're like looking for a nostalgia trip, unless you've got some particular affinity towards the second game, the first one is the one to go back and replay, because it's still an excellent game.
Absolutely.
Both good games, but the first one to me is like A tier.
Of S tier.
Yeah, like top tier, whereas
the
other one is probably, to me, it's just good.
Yeah. DKC 1 is like an all-time great.
Exactly.
DKC 2 is a good game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there we go.
Does that bring us to the end?
Unless you've got anything else you want to add?
Not about this game. Enjoyed my time. Nice brief love affair. And I guess it's time to move on. Do you want to tell folks what we're moving on to next? Since you've been having a good time seeing
you can. Well, you can tell them what's going on next, because I've done a lot of talking, and then I'll tell you my brief experiences with it thus far, if you want.
Yeah, let's do it. Next up, we have got Resident Evil 4 Remake coming over the horizon, like the ominous spectre that it is. I assume that the podcast for this game's not going to be too far behind. But we'll see how we get on. But yeah, I'm anticipating enjoying this one.
Yeah, it's.
I'm ready for a game like this.
Yeah, I would suggest you maybe think about getting it on PlayStation, because
I heard there's some flicker issues on PlayStation.
There are graphical issues on the PlayStation version compared to the Xbox One, but the Xbox version has dead zone issues with the aiming that will make it feel incredibly weird to play. You can get used to it. I've gotten used to it. But I remember the beginning of the game feeling like I couldn't hit a barn door with a beach ball, and I was like, I don't know why my aiming is so shit. I can't shoot in this game. It is very, very difficult. And then I read a lot of, like, Digital Foundry have gone into it about how, like, the dead zone is massive. Like, you can move the right analog stick. You probably have to move it about halfway pressed before he starts to aim.
Oh, that's pure.
Whereas the PlayStation 5 one does not have that problem at all.
Might have a look at that. I was chatting to a friend earlier this week, and this is maybe a controversial... Well, it's not really a controversial take, but I think I'm now at the stage with PlayStation where they're now sitting third on my platform of choice.
Oh, okay.
Like, if I can get it on PC, I think I would rather get it on PC. Purely,
my head went Switch. Why the hell did I do that?
No, that's so far down. I'd rather get it on Dreamcast than Switch. But the
same specs.
Yeah. Based purely, this is going off in a different direction, but based purely on, like, we speak more privately than on a podcast about this, based on what our podcasts are, the subject matter of it. But both, because you and I are both like collectors of video games, and in terms of like modern video games, obviously there's a price thing that would switch me, but for the most part, if I can, I would rather get the game digitally, because because it's less hassle, and my house is already filled up with enough shit. I don't need to keep adding to it. And also, when it comes to the Xbox, like, for example, if I'm playing a game in my office, I've got an Xbox in my office, and then I've got an Xbox in my living room. If I go play a game, save it in my office, walk downstairs and turn on my Xbox, I can pick up exactly where I left off. Like, and it is seamless. And so, like, that is something that I like about having digital games. And I also like I say, sort of building on this, because we're collectors, I'm enjoying building a library of games, and my primary place to play games tends to be an Xbox, so that's where I'll get the game first and foremost. But yeah, I now don't trust, because, well, Nintendo have just closed down their eShops on the Wii U and the
fucking dickheads
and their DS. In addition to when the PS5 came out, the amount of times that Sony have tried to nickel and dime me by making me buy a game that I already own on a PS4 just so that I can play it on my PS5.
Yeah.
And actually not necessarily having games, I don't really trust them anymore, that my library is going to be with me as I move through the generations, whereas I trust a PC and I trust an Xbox much more.
I absolutely trust Xbox more for sure. Yeah, definitely. And PC, I mean, the ecosystem is not going to change, is it?
No,
it's just going to stay.
So I don't trust them. I don't trust.
At least
them.
Sony backed down from shutting down their store.
Yeah.
For now.
They also backed down because they were doing something. What it was is if you bought Horizon Zero Dawn, was it the new one? Was it Call of the Wild or something like that? Or if I mixed it up with a Zelda game?
That was a DLC for the first game.
The new Horizon game, anyway. I think, if
Forbidden
I'm remembering
West.
this right, Forbidden West. If you bought it on PS4, they told you that you were going to get it on PS5 automatically. And then at some point, they removed that and started trying to charge people for it that had bought it on PS4 and PS5 until there was an unholy ruckus, and then they had to backtrack about it. But it's like, I shouldn't have to kick off so that I can keep playing the games I own. And like, yes, I can hear people saying, oh, you've got it on PS4, just keep your PS4 out. I could do that, you're right, but I could also just have it on Xbox and not do that and have it on my new console. And
I could have it on a platform that cares about game preservation and backwards compatibility.
So I might
that has gone forward and said every Xbox from now on will be compatible with every Xbox game that's on this one.
As much as the technology allows and contracts allows, they've gone back and basically made all original Xbox games backwards compatible that they can do. So that's how much effort they're putting into it. So yes, to sort of finish off, if I can get it on PC and it's not got those issues, I might get it on there instead.
Be interesting to look at that. I don't know what the case is with PC. That's probably a good shout.
I'll have a Google around.
Yeah, look at Digital Foundry and check the lay of the land. What I will say is that the more I go through it, it's definitely scarier.
I did see a funny tweet while I was at the gym waiting for my spin class to start today.
Yeah.
I looked at my phone and you had tweeted something about Resident Evil logic telling you that you should pick up these keys, but you don't want to pick up these keys, so you're writing a tweet about picking up these keys.
It fucking instantly shit kicked off as soon as I picked them up, because it always does. I had to keep having to pause that. I was just finding excuses to pause the game.
If you're finding it scary, I may be in trouble here.
Shitting myself.
Because as we discovered with like Alien Isolation, there's a type of fear that I can't deal with.
Yeah, and that's the bit where you don't get to play as Leon. You have to play as the girl with no guns and just run away from shit. Oh, mate, it's terrifying. Genuinely terrifying.
I can't wait.
I will be there. Don't worry. I'll be on a Discord or whatever you need me for. If you need that support. Actually, just before we go though, the thing that we were talking about Sony and stuff a minute ago. I sent you that text today, didn't I, about Sony over in Japan and their antitrust?
Yeah.
How funny is it that Sony have been kicking off saying, oh, Microsoft buying Activision is going to kill competition, and they have been like, Congress in the States have found that they've basically been purposely gypping Microsoft in Japan, signing exclusive contracts to get games not put on Xbox, violating antitrust laws between America and Japan. It's like, you're doing exactly what you've said that Microsoft might do, that Microsoft have constantly told you they're not going to do.
I can't fully remember the story, but
people in glass fucking houses.
Yeah, there's been a few of these stories coming out that just reflect really poor on Sony. Like, there's someone's like, there's been meetings with executives, and basically it's like the Xbox or Activision people are like, so what can we do to help? What can we do to sort of grease the wheels, make you feel comfortable that we're not here?
There's Jim Ryan who said this, by the way.
They're like, oh no, there's nothing you can do. We just want to fuck you up, basically.
Yeah, we just want to block the merger. Jim Ryan has actually said that. What a dickhead.
So it's proper. I think it's proper. Babies at the pram. Like, babies at the pram is a bad thing, but yeah, toys at the pram moment. Like, it's just their arguments are based on the assumption that people looking at these legal arguments don't actually know or play games or know the industry. Like, they're talking about how like Call of Duty is going to seriously damage their bottom line when Call of Duty is still massive, but you've got 10 years to make a new game. And what about all these first party games? Like, is Uncharted being exclusive and not damaging to Xbox?
You bought Bungie, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
You've got the Destiny guys in your company.
And plus, the shooter
Chill
these
out.
days, let's face it, the shooter these days that people need to own, that companies want to own, is Fortnite. And that's going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And now that Apple have been told that they have to allow other marketplaces on their ecosystem legally,
Excellent.
Fortnite will be back on phones soon enough, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Have you
if we're
seen
talking
the video about this new creator that they've added to Fortnite?
no.
Oh my good God. I'm going to send you this video, and it's not something I am ever interested in playing, but holy moly, it is impressive. So I'll
Okay.
send you the basically Epic, where they did a showcase and they were talking about their new engine, and simultaneously they've released like a level editor / creator
Oh,
for
right.
Fortnite, and some of it looks utterly stunning, like
Okay.
unbelievable. Like you wouldn't even realize it was Fortnite. So yeah,
Wow.
I'll send you a link to the demo they did. It's really, really worth looking at.
Sweet. Speaking of footage, there's 10 minutes of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for me to watch after this.
Oh yes, that's what I'm off
Forgot
to do
about
as well
that.
now. Got some
And then
Donkey to be watching.
that
Some
and
Donkey Kong to be watching.
cartoon, yeah. And then I guess as a final sign off for me, I'd like to salute the inevitable death of the Video Game Hall of Fame podcast now that Elon fucking Musk has made it so you have to be verified to vote in Twitter polls. Thanks, prick.
Has he?
Yep, so that's ruined that.
God.
You can't embed other polls onto Twitter as far as I can tell, so I don't actually know how we're going to do the public voting for what goes in the Hall of Fame anymore.
You could do links, can you not?
Yeah.
You could link to an outside.
Yeah, like a MailChimp or whatever the fuck it is. Just have to hope that people want to click twice instead of once.
Someone will. KDB will.
Or he'll back down, but I don't think he's going to back down. Why is he not stepped down yet? I'm pretty sure there was a poll about that.
Yeah, he was going to do that. That's why he's got rid of them.
Different. Yeah, exactly. He also said he was going to take polls on any major policy decisions in future, and
Only
didn't.
from the verified lot, which is probably just him and people making fake Nintendo accounts at this point.
Oh, the world's ruined. What a time it was to play Donkey Kong Country, because we could pretend it wasn't a world of shit.
Think back to a simpler time where you were
when all we had to worry about was the IRA or something.
The IRA, or being locked in a room by your friend's dad until you finished a level.
Yeah, the only thing I had to worry about was the ex-copper who was bullying us into playing Donkey Kong and can't play football.
And I suppose that brings us to the close of another classic adventure of our intrepid duo. Time to pack our bags. I've wrote backs. That means bags. Grab our coats and put our chairs on the table. Did you have to do that at school? Put your chairs on the table before you left?
Yeah.
That was
Only at the end of the day, I guess.
If you enjoyed what you heard today, and even if you didn't, please subscribe to our podcast feed of choice, and then do some considering about whether you can find it deep within your hearts to leave us a review. You can also
5 stars.
Exactly. You can also is that a quote? Why did you say it like that?
It's a quote from like the Botchamania thing where he's like -5 stars talking about a shit wrestling match. I just took rid of the minus because we don't want that. You can't do that. Don't do that to us.
You can also like and sub to our YouTube channel, Winners U Podcast, should your heart so desire. And you can also get in touch with and tell us what you thought about any of the games we've covered over the years by firing us an email over to awinnersupod@gmail.com. You can also keep up to date with the latest going ons here at A Winners U Towers by following us on Twitter at WinnersUPod, or give myself or Alex a follow at David Smiley 1 and at Super Thrillix respectively, where you can be bombarded with me commiserating Scotland's demise with the retirement of rugby legend Stuart Hogg, or see what fresh dose of ring sting Alex is dishing out to any news outlet discussing the problems Antonio Conte had during his time at Spurs. Alex, have you any other business, or are we smashing a couple of those crates over there containing some animals and riding them the hell out of here?
Rest in peace, goombastomp.com.
Oh yeah.
Good night, sweet prince. Fuck knows where we're going to distribute this now.
All the many millions of listeners being on that website brought to us is at a close.
I wonder. I'm very interested to see what happens to the numbers once we're not on there every week. I'm going to have to go back on the bloody subreddits and start putting them on there again.
In one fell swoop, all Alex's podcasts are drying up on the vine, withering away to die.
Yeah.
On that bombshell, I've been David. He has been Alex, and we have been A Winner Is You. And I'm out.
Keep gaming.